What would happen if a single spark could ignite a fire that consumes the entire world? Imagine one man holding the weight of millions of souls in the palm of his hand. He wasn't born into royalty. He didn't inherit a throne or a crown.
He started as a face in the crowd, an ordinary man hidden among the masses.
Yet, he would rise to lead a nation into darkness and plunge the entire planet into absolute chaos. His shadow would stretch across continents, leaving a legacy of iron and blood. This is the story of a figure who changed history. Born in 1889, in a quiet, unremarkable town on the border of Austria. To the world, he was just another name in a registry. Just a face in a small village, where nothing ever seemed to change. No one looking at that cradle could have ever imagined the storm he would one day unleash upon history, but behind closed doors. A dark foundation was being laid. His father was a man of iron and shadow. Strict, imposing. A cold authority figure who ruled the household with an uncompromising grip. Every word was a command. Every mistake was met with a heavy hand. The air in that house was thick with discipline and fear.
Yet, in the midst of that coldness, there was his mother.
The only source of light and warmth he ever knew.
She was his protector.
The soft whisper against his father's roar. But this contrast created a deep internal fracture. A child who craved the freedom to dream. Trapped in a world of absolute control. He didn't fit in with the other children. He didn't belong in their games or their laughter. Even then, he was an outsider, watching a world that he felt did not understand him. As the years passed, he refused to follow the path his father had carved out for him. He didn't want the dull, gray life of a civil servant. He didn't want to be another cog in the machine of bureaucracy. He wanted to create. He wanted to be an artist. Painting. Designing. Shaping a world that existed only in his imagination. That was the life he craved.
With nothing but a suitcase and a head full of dreams,
he traveled to the grand city of Vienna. He spent his days in the galleries, walking the halls of the Academy of Fine Arts, praying for a chance to belong among the masters. But the world of art had no room for him. He was rejected. Not just once.
But twice.
For anyone else, it would have been a simple setback.
A moment to pivot, to grow, or to move on. But for him, it was a devastating blow to his very soul. A wound to his pride that would never truly heal.
And in that cold, lonely city,
Among the crowds of Vienna,
the aspiring artist began to vanish.
something darker was starting to take its place. Everything was about to change. In the grand, cold streets of Vienna,
he lived on the very edge of existence.
A ghost in a city of palaces. He moved from one crumbling, cheap lodging house to the next, sleeping in crowded shelters, sharing rooms with the desperate and the forgotten. He survived by selling small, hand-painted postcards to tourists, just to earn enough for a crust of bread or a bowl of soup. But it wasn't just his stomach that was hungry. This was the moment his mind began to sharpen into something dangerous.
Vienna was a boiling pot of tension. A city of deep contradictions. Complex politics, unstable economies, and a society fractured by old grudges and new fears. Walking those streets, he began to soak in the radical ideas of the time. Ideas about nationhood, about the absolute nature of power, and the hunt for someone to blame for the world's failures. He looked for a scapegoat,
A target for his growing resentment.
At first, these were just fleeting thoughts in a lonely room.
but slowly,
Through the long, cold nights of poverty,
those thoughts began to harden.
they weren't just ideas anymore.
They were becoming a conviction. A belief that would one day set the world on fire.
Then, the world as he knew it collapsed into the fires of World War I for the first time in his life.
He found a sense of meaning in the chaos.
A place where he finally felt he belonged. He didn't fight for Austria. He joined the ranks of the German army.
Amidst the trenches and the constant thunder of artillery,
He was no longer the person he once was.
In the mud and the blood.
He found a strange, dark discipline.
He was focused.
He was unwavering.
He was fanatically loyal to the cause.
The Great War.
It gave him something he had never possessed before. The feeling of being part of something far greater than himself. He felt the pulse of a nation in the heat of battle.
But then,
the guns fell silent. The war ended in a crushing, humiliating defeat for Germany. And for him.
This was a reality he simply could not accept.
it wasn't just a lost battle. It wasn't just a signed treaty.
To him,
it was a knife in the back.
A betrayal by the very world he had finally started to call his own.
In the wake of the Great War, Germany didn't just fall. It shattered.
The nation was a landscape of broken dreams and hollowed-out lives.
The economy was in a death spiral.
And everyday people were drowning in a sea of desperation.
In times of absolute darkness,
In the quiet moments of starvation and fear, people start looking for an answer.
Any answer. And in the smoke-filled beer halls and crowded squares,
He stepped forward to provide it.
It wasn't necessarily the truth.
but it was exactly what the desperate were starving to hear. He didn't just speak, he roared. He spoke of ancient enemies hiding in the shadows. He spoke of a stolen honor that had to be reclaimed with iron and blood. He spoke of a vision, of a promise to make Germany powerful and proud once again. He gave them a target for their rage. And what followed changed everything.
Was that they started to believe.
A single voice in a crowd
Was becoming the heartbeat of a nation. He wasn't a tactical genius on the battlefield.
He didn't have the mind of a seasoned general.
But he possessed a weapon far more dangerous than any cannon or rifle.
He was a master of the spoken word, an orator who could command the very air in a room.
He understood the dark machinery of the human psyche. He understood the crushing weight of fear,
the burning heat of collective anger,
and exactly how to harvest those raw emotions. He knew how to turn a person's desperation into a singular, focused power.
with every speech delivered in the flickering light of a torch, with every word shouted into a microphone. But he was weaving a spell over a broken nation.
Slowly, word by word, breath by breath,
He was transforming.
from a nameless drifter in the streets, from a shadow in the back of a hall,
Into a leader that millions were ready to follow into the abyss. In 19330, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place.
He didn't just join the government, he became the heartbeat of the German state.
he rose to the very top. And from that height,
The world as it was known began to dissolve.
Almost overnight, everything was dismantled and rebuilt in his image.
He began constructing a regime of absolute shadow, a dictatorship.
he seized the levers of the media,
Turning information into a weapon of mass persuasion.
He clamped his grip on the throat of society, dictating how people lived, how they acted, and eventually, how they were allowed to think.
To the outside eye, Germany was waking up from its long slumber.
The factories were humming.
The streets were filled with marching boots.
A nation was being reborn.
But this was a rebirth fueled by a dangerous, toxic energy. As the country's strength grew, so did the darkness behind it.
His power was now absolute.
But with that power came a hunger that could never be satisfied.
A monstrous ambition that was already looking far beyond its own borders.
That monstrous ambition.
And it could never be contained within a single border. It was a hunger that grew with every mile of earth he claimed.
He wanted more.
More territory. More absolute power.
Total, unquestioned dominance over the continent and beyond.
And then,
the fragile peace of the world finally shattered.
World War II erupted like a volcano.
And at first we thought it was just another drill. But the clocks kept spinning, faster and faster, and
it seemed like he was invincible.
One by one, the nations of Europe began to fall like dominoes into German hands. His armies marched through ancient capitals. His flags flew where kings once stood. He was at the peak of his dark glory. Watching as the map of the world was redrawn in his shadow. But in that moment of triumph, in the height of his pride, the seeds of his own destruction were being sown.
That very same absolute confidence,
that unwavering belief in his own destiny,
was blinding him to the fatal mistakes he was about to make.
The map was too large, and his reach had finally exceeded his grasp.
He committed the fatal error of arrogance,
opening too many fronts,
fighting too many enemies all at once.
He looked at the world and saw only weakness,
viciously underestimating the resolve of those who stood against him. He truly believed he was a man of destiny, convinced that he was simply incapable of losing.
But history, cold and unforgiving, was no longer on his side.
The tides of war began to turn with a violent, rhythmic certainty.
One defeat bled into the next. One retreat became a desperate flight.
The Allied forces began their relentless counteroffensive,
closing in from the east and the west like a tightening noose.
The once mighty war machine was grinding to a halt.
And Germany,
a vision that was meant to last for generations, was systematically being reduced to dust. The grand visions of empire were vanishing,
suffocated by smoke and the sound of approaching thunder.
And in the end,
there was no glory left.
Everything he had built, every life he had touched,
ended in the cold, silent ruins of a shattered world.
This entire harrowing story, it's about so much more than just the life of one man.
It is a stark, terrifying lesson.
A testament to the incredible, devastating power of a single individual.
How one life can alter the course of an entire planet.
It is the journey of a lonely child who dreamed of holding a paintbrush.
Who grew into a dictator, clutching a nation's throat. And a vision that reshaped the course of the world.
This isn't just a ghost story to be remembered on anniversaries.
It's a warning to be understood in the deepest parts of our soul.
It's a reminder that power, unchecked authority, when it falls into the wrong, twisted hands,
can unleash a destruction so profound.
It leaves an indelible scar on existence itself.